Later this month, millions of people are expected to participate in a global climate strike. The events start on the 20th, with a second demonstration happening a week later.
Climate change, of course, is a major platform for several of the 2020 presidential candidates. United Electrical, Radio, and Machine Workers of America, dubbed UE, support the strike. They've also thrown their weight behind presidential contender and sponsor of the Green New Deal, Bernie Sanders. Joining us via Skype to discuss the strike and their endorsement is the president of their local chapter, UE Local 506, Scott Slawson. Scott, thank you so much for joining us.
Oh, my pleasure. How are you today?
So we're doing really well. So Scott, tell us a little bit about why you've decided to support this strike and what it's important to your union.
Yeah, I think when you look at an industrial base that the United States has been in for X amount of years, and you look at how the carbon emissions across the world have gone up, and the fact that I have two daughters and I want to protect the world for them, you have to understand that temperatures are rising, the polar ice caps are melting. We don't know what that's going to lead to. Storms are intensifying. They're coming at us more rapid. More properties getting damaged. And, from an industrial standpoint, we build locomotives for a living. But from that standpoint, I would still like to have a job years from now. And if we wipe the world out, that's not going to happen.
Now, historically, there has been at times tension between environmentalists and the labor movement. Why is your union a little different?
I would tell you our union is much different than other unions out there to begin with. We're a rank and file union, so, we're a bottom-up driven union. But I think we've always been at the forefront of these kind of things, and we understand that, living peacefully in the environment and coexisting and figuring out a way to make manufacturing coexist with, the economy as the way it is today is something that we take very seriously, and we want to figure this out and make sure that everybody has a seat at the table when we're figuring this out.
Scott, we've spoken to some of your union brethren who certainly don't agree, particularly those who work in the coal mining industry. What would your response to many of those workers who rely on some of these industries, which the Green New Deal would wipe out, and they don't believe some of the rhetoric about future jobs coming to them? What would your response to them be, and to some of the people in your own union who might be affected by this?
Yeah, I think my response would be, I understand that. We have dealt with trade deals in the past that have hurt our own membership, and we've dealt with, the government providing schooling because we've lost jobs to overseas competitors. But at some point, we have to figure this out, because there's no doubting that the temperature across the world is rising. The polar ice caps are melting. The oceans are desalinating. The Gulf Stream is changing. The storms are intensifying. And, we're seeing more and more of our coastal lands get wiped out. We're seeing storms intensify through the Midwest. There's just so much that has to be done, and we all have to figure it out together, and we have to figure out how to make it work for everybody. And I think that that's our obligation.
Scott, could you give our viewers a little bit of background on your union? Tell us a little bit about what type of work your members do. And also, you talked about how you're a rank and file union. What does that mean in terms of your governance?
So we actually, we're what they call a bottom-up union. We charge union dues. They come to our union. We make the decisions. We direct our national union in the way we want to go. Most unions do it the opposite. So ours is actually a member-driven organization, which means we're bottom-up. But as far as, what was the rest you wanted to know? I'm sorry.
What type of work your members do?
Yeah, we actually build locomotives. So we're a locomotive. We're actually, we build locomotive equipment. We build mining equipment. We build marine and power stationary equipment for the world.
So, Scott, I mean, this is the fundamental tension, right? I mean, locomotives and mining equipment, these are all used in these industries, which the Green New Deal would essentially move the United States past from. There's no guarantee, as we've seen from organizations like Solar City and Tesla, that any of these jobs are going to trickle down to the sectors of which you and your workers work in. So why do you support this policy?
Well, I support it because I have children and I want them to be able to live. I mean, that's
yeah, but how are you supposed to support those children?
Well, I'll tell you right now, we're working with the state of California, building a zero emission locomotive. I mean, that's how we do this. We figure it out as a society. We figure out what can we transition into, what can we do to take carbon emissions out of the air, and what can we do to reduce pollution? And California is leading the way with a lot of this. And let's face it, it's one of the largest economies in the world on its own.
Mm-hmm. Scott, your union recently became the first this cycle to endorse Senator Bernie Sanders for president. How does that, is that all of your membership voting on that? Talk to us about that process, and also why is it that you all decided he was the best candidate?
So at this point, I would tell you that the National Union, it was done at National Convention. The National Union, which was made up of delegates from all around the union, made that endorsement. It's up to the locals to individually make that endorsement on their own. So I go back to we're a rank and file union. If our membership decides that that's something they want to do, then we will do that as well. But that all has to go through our legislative action committee. So as a local, we have not made that endorsement. As a national union, we have.
And what was it at the national level that was appealing to people?
I think Bernie is that candidate from a labor standpoint with UE. He's got a long history with UE. He's actually supported many of our labor actions. He's stood for many of the principles and policies we stand for. And he's walked the walk. He's actually been on picket lines with UE members in the past. Even outside of campaigns, he's been on picket lines and petitioned for American workers. So I think that from a union standpoint, it was the right call.
Which of the candidates do you think does not measure up to the standard that you want to set for supporting unions?
Yeah, that's a difficult question. I think right now there's definitely a lot of candidates out there. They all have some different opinions. I'll reserve that answer until that list whittles down some.
All right, fair enough, Scott.
Scott, thank you so much. So great to have you this morning.
Thank you. I appreciate the call. Thank you.
Next up on Rising, some former Trump administration staffers have gone on to work at Fox News. Others dance with the stars on TV.
Former campaign manager Corey Lewandowski is considering a Senate run as his next act. He will tell us why when Rising continues.